Welcome.
Hi everyone.
Here we are on Mom Meets World.
My name is Khyati Desai-Seltzer. I'm the owner of Vyana Infant Massage.
And my name is Angela Eusis, founder of Radiant Heart Center here in Virginia. So let's tell everyone how we came up with the clever name of Mom Meets World.
Yes, so for those of you who remember, there was a show called Boy Meets World. And so we really feel that this name represents the birth of a mom. So as we know, when a baby is born, also there's a birth of a mother and a father, because there are so many new things that come to the mom, new emotions, new feelings, new experiences, lots of information, lots of resources. It can almost be a little overwhelming. And then there's also shedding of the old former self before you're a mom. And so we really felt that this name represented the meeting, the mom taking birth and meeting this new world of identity and information. So Angela, tell us a little bit about what we were thinking in terms of the goals for this show and for Mom Meets World.
So we really just want to come together in community. There's such a gift in being with community and having a sisterhood, and we're lacking that in our culture. So many other places around the world build that culture innately because people live near their family, they live together. Here in the States, we're very much in nuclear families, away from our families. It's hard to make friends, and we just feel really isolated. So our biggest goal is to show up here, share our experiences and the wisdom we have, and just be here for you. We had experiences having support and community. We also had experiences not, but we want to be here for you.
And I think that you bring up a great point. So I really do believe that our lack of community and how we live today is sort of the cause of a lot of our issues, whether it's, if we talk about mothers, it's isolation, or it's postpartum depression, it's anxiety, it's stress, because even if you have someone coming in to clean your house or you have somebody to watch your kids, you're still doing the majority of things on your own. Whereas when we lived in community, as many countries do, or at a time that we did in America, you had someone taking care of a lot of different things, and so it was less overwhelming, and that's where it takes a village comes from, right? Because really
and we're so embarrassed with that. We have a same client or colleague, friend really, who recently had a baby, and we said, oh, we have a friend who's a postpartum doula, like why don't we have her come and serve you? She's like, well, I'm half naked and I've got milk everywhere and my house is a mess. And Khyati and I were like, right, that's how it should be. But we're so embarrassed and we feel like we have to have everything put away and tidy for someone to come and help us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't make sense, but that's what we feel. We feel like we're going to be judged. There's this idea in the States of being the perfect mom and seeming all together. Social media does not help that, right? Especially when we're feeling isolated and alone in the early phases or whatever phase in motherhood, to then look through your posts, and see all these happy, smiling families and people who just seem to have it all figured out, and then you come home and you're like, oh, a mess. So I think that's part of it too, that we need to break down that barrier. A mess over here. If you want to know the truth, it's our third time filming this episode. It's just, here's reality, right? Like, we're not going to be embarrassed to share things with you and tell you how it really is, because we want to give you permission to be more honest and open yourselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so that would probably be our number one advice, is whether you're pregnant, you're soon to be pregnant, or you're a new mom, even if you are a seasoned mom, like, have a community, have a tribe, because they're going to have your back. They're going to help you watch the kids or make meals or go on, get you out of the house if you need to. And so community is so critical. Yeah. And it really is the difference between having a healthy life and not. It reminds me of how we met almost a year ago.
Tell our story. I love it.
So I was actually scheduled to talk at an event about infant massage. And as I was waiting for my lift to go home, there was a pop-up at the bottom of the venue, which ended up being Angela's friend. So she's, she said, what do you do? And I told her, I said, I teach infant massage. She's like, oh, you should meet my friend Anj. Anj, is that an ethnic name? Is it short for something? So, but she just said Anj. And so she connected us, and she was right. We had a lot in common, both in terms of values and lifestyle, but also the work that we did complemented one another. And so since then, we've worked together. We've done tea talks. If you've seen them, those were a lot of fun.
We had fun doing it.
Workshops.
And we held events for mamas.
Yeah, and we are both somewhat new entrepreneurs. And so being a mom can often be lonely and isolating. Being an entrepreneur can be the same. And so it was great that we could be together as entrepreneurs, but also as mothers, so that when I saw her, it wasn't like, okay, let's get back to work, but, oh, how was your son's morning, or how did your daughter's first day of school go? And acknowledging each other as humans and as mothers, and not just as business women. Yeah. And so that's been really great, that support system.
Yeah, for sure. It's made it so much more fun. Like, if you've seen your Tea Talks, our Tea Talks, you know, it's different to receive information if someone's looking at the camera and telling you their story and just talking directly to you versus listening to two people dialogue and then also including you in it, right? It's been really fun, and we're super excited for this series because we have so much information we want to share.
But before we get to all of that, we want to tell you all a little bit about who we are and our background. So, Angela, do you want to kick us off? What is your business? What is your family?
Yes.
How did you get here?
How did I get here? It all started with my mom, as most of our journeys do, but her choices impacted mine very much so. When I was growing up, my mom used to always tell my brother and I that she wanted to feel all the pain we brought her coming into the world. So she had a natural birth with my brother and I both in the hospital. And I don't think I ever really thought about it until I was pregnant. And then as soon as I was pregnant, it was this immediate, well, if she can do it, I can do it, so I'm going to have a natural birth. And then as I started researching things, just looking into it and thinking about it, right, listening to my own heart, I hadn't had a lot of experience in the hospitals. I got a splinter in my foot when I was 8, and I remember being very traumatized. And there was something about being home, not having to move, being in my safe environment, a place that I felt comfortable, that was really attractive to me. So I told my husband and my parents, and my mom turned to my husband and was like, she can do natural, but she has to do it in the hospital. We have to convince her. I was like, Jeff, my team. And, you know, so then we watched, there's a movie, Ricky Lake had not a great experience with her first pregnancy. So when she got pregnant again, she started doing research. She created a documentary called The Business of Being Born. I was like, Jeff, let's watch this documentary. We watched it, and he was all on board. He was like, okay, great, we're doing a home birth. And I really appreciated, he said, you know, you're number 1, baby's number 2, I'm number 3. So if this is the route you want to go, we're doing it. And so that's what we did. And I'm really grateful for my mom's choice, right? Because at 16 weeks, I went to my regular checkup, and I asked my gynecologist, you know, what are my choices? And she said, you know, we're at this practice, these are different doctors, this is basically your trajectory. And I asked her about home birth or a midwife, and she really shut down. I was like, I don't know, you just have to figure that out. And I thought it was so unfortunate because I just wanted information so I could make a choice. And I feel very much that doctors and midwives seem to be working separately and apart, and it's a disservice ultimately to women and families because we just want to feel support. We want to support new moms, pregnant women, veteran moms, you know, wherever you are. We need information so that we can listen and choose the right path for our families. So fortunately, I was set on my path, and I said, okay. So then I just did my own research. I found a midwife, and, you know, that was the path that I took. And so through my pregnancy, my first pregnancy, I have 3 kids. Micaela's almost 9, Luca's close to being 7, and Mateo is 3. So with my first, I felt so empowered in my first pregnancy. I read a book called Real Food for Mother and Baby, How to Eat for 2 by Nina Plank. I highly recommend. And then, so I was focused on good nutrition. I was still exercising, but ultimately I was still tuning into myself and listening and feeling empowered by the choices I was making for our family. And I had Mika at home, had the birth that I wanted, and it was just, that birth experience was the most empowering experience of my life. My love language is words of affirmation, and so afterwards Jeff's like, you did amazing. And my response was, I know, which I never do, right? But I felt so empowered that since that moment was like, I want to bring this to women. I want other women to be able to choose, not feel judged, be able to receive a variety of information instead of just this one path and make the right choice for themselves. So I went from having this uber amazing experience and being so elated and proud of myself in that birth to very shortly after, with a shift of hormones, falling into a depression that lasted for a really long time. And I remember watching Jeff. I remember watching Jeff walk to work, and I would just think, like, you're free, you're free, you're free. And I felt so alone. I used to be a teacher before I had my daughter, and I had 41 first graders at one point. Yes, it was illegal. But I thought, like, if I can have 41 first graders and one baby, like, I'm going to crush motherhood. I got crushed. My daughter is an amazing child, but since day one, she has been super strong-willed. And I just had this misconception that as a mom, I was going to be in charge. I was going to call the shots. And this little 6-pound, she wasn't even, she was 5'12" baby came into the world and was like, no, I'm in charge.
You're wrong, Mom.
You're wrong. And there was so much, I felt so much stress. All these books that I read, you know, it was like, baby should go to sleep at 9. Mm-hmm. It would be 9:06. I'm like, go to bed. What's wrong? You got to sleep. That's what the books say. And of course, she's like, there's some really stressful situation going on. I can't sleep in this,
right.
you know? And it was all these things. So I went from this extremely amazing, empowering experience of pregnancy and birth to just like, what the heck happened, you know? And I just felt alone. And I even had people. I had a postpartum doula. Her visits, those 3 hours she came, were like the light of my day, because she would come in, she would feed me.
So tell us a little bit about what a postpartum doula does.
Okay, so a postpartum doula is, the word doula means servant, or, you know, servant of women. Mm-hmm. And a postpartum doula does a variety of things. Again, in this culture, we feel like we're supposed to have it all together. Fortunately, I didn't feel that way. And so Emily would come into the house. They do whatever you want. She would come, she would cook a meal for me if Mika was asleep. Otherwise, she would take her, she would change her diaper. If I needed to sleep, she would play with her or hold her, do whatever she needed. But she always made sure I had a really big, nutritious breakfast, a lot of protein, and just to be in bed overwhelmed because I was up during the night, as most new moms are, all new moms, and then to smell like a homemade meal being cooked for you. And she would bring me a cup of tea that had, you know, she would bring me fenugreek or the mother's milk to help with lactation. Just for a woman to be nurturing you is so important. And so after that, well, so Emily came, I had her. She came for 3 months, and when she was done, because she had already committed to another family, I was like, I need help. So she
don't
go. So she had another friend, because doulas often have backup doulas in case they can't come.
Gotcha.
So she had a backup doula, and they were both amazing, you know, but it still wasn't enough. Like, I lived away from my family. I was in Chicago. My parents would come visit, you know, but that was stressful too, because then when, especially my mom, who's like nurturing me, loving, trying to help, would come visit, she wanted to do everything to help me because she wasn't around in the day-to-day.
Right.
And then I felt judged in my mothering that I wasn't enough, and that I wasn't just able to do it, and her say, oh, you're doing such a great job. She's like, let me do this and this and this. And then I was like, well, I'm a mom too.
I know some things.
So many emotions, you know? And so it just drew me to this work. And I did a postpartum doula training about 6 months ago. And in it, I learned that if you have postpartum depression, it actually peaks at age 4 years, not 4 months, of your oldest child, which is exactly what my experience was. When my daughter was just around 4, I felt completely lost. I didn't know who I was. I was like, is this all I am? Like, this yelling, crying woman who has a baby who feels completely like out of control about everything.
Yeah.
So I was talking to my husband, and I started going back to yoga. And then there was a yoga teacher who, in one class, just got to my heart and told me about this yoga training. So I signed up for the yoga training, and it was the best thing I did. It was like the first thing in 4 years that I carved time out for myself. You know, that Jeff was in charge of the kids, taking care of them. I was spending weekends doing this yoga training, and it was like finally coming back to myself.
Yeah.
And that has led to me learning about nutrition, practicing yoga for both women or men, and also prenatal yoga, Reiki, you know, it's all kind of culminating together, but my purpose here is to serve women and to show up and create space for all women in whatever phase of life they're in, both motherhood and beyond, because no matter what, we need community.
And then what was your experience with Luca and Matteo?
So fortunately with my boys, I did not have any postpartum depression. And it was different. I knew to ask for help. I had a different midwife. We had my daughter in Chicago and then had the boys here. And with both, the midwife that I had here said, and she'll be on our show in an episode or two, well, a few more. But the midwife I had said, you know, in the Amish community, the mother stays in bed for 10 days. The women in the community are responsible for her, and then kind of responsible for her in the sense they're cooking meals for her, taking care of her, but there's also other women feeding her other children, doing her household chores, etc. She stays in bed for 10 days. So on the second go round with Luca, I told Jeff, I was like, get ready. I'm going to be in bed for 10 days.
You know where to find me.
Yeah, you know where to find me. I'm going to be there, and I just need you and my mom to take care of Mika and take care of everything else, because I'm going to take care of myself this time. Yeah. And so I did that, and I did it with Matteo too, and it was the most amazing thing. And I remember Jeff saying, you know, I think 4 days after you take the baby to the doctor, and he's like, aren't you excited you get to leave the house? And I was like, not really. I'm really happy here. So
it's so interesting, because with Mika, you were like, you're free.
Right.
And then with Luca, you were like, no, I just want to get back into bed.
I know.
So
well, I think too, I think it's because in this country, we don't invite women to slow down.
Yeah.
I did hot power yoga with my daughter, and I remember wanting people's craving and attention for doing, you know, it's like, you're 8 months pregnant and you're in hot power yoga? That's amazing. And I was like, oh, okay, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what we do for women in this country. You know, we don't say like, oh my God, so who's coming to take care of you? Do you want me to, we don't look for the nurturing. We don't know what to do with it. So we push ourselves. We don't feel like we can slow down. How many women work until their due date and pray that the baby's not going to come before? Yes. Right?
To the last day.
To the last day, we're like looking and craving and hoping we get more time, because we like have this schedule. We want this baby to fit in with our schedule.
Yes, absolutely.
And hardcore, I learned Mika was not fitting into my schedule. She was my new schedule, and I had to slow down and just enjoy it, because it passed really quickly. Now I think back and like, I missed a lot of it, because I felt so alone and I was so into my own emotions that I just pray that she felt loved. And I know she did, but I don't remember that, you know? So with the boys, it was different. I asked for help. I was willing to just lay in bed and stare at them, because even though we're going to share a lot about how hard motherhood is, it's also the most amazing thing, right? Like, you see these little fingers and they like make a little movement with their mouth. You're like, oh my God, you're amazing. You know, it's just so incredible. It's so raw, you know? But I was like trying to rush through it. I had a plan. I was like, Mika's going to be on my plan. Yeah. And when she wasn't, it just overwhelmed the crap out of me. Yeah. And with the boys, I was like, great, who are you? What's your plan? What do you want to do? And I just laid back. Right. You know, and we'll talk later, but that's what they do in so many other parts of the world. There is a built-in, postpartum is part of this whole transition to motherhood, and we just try to rush it. We're always like, I got to bounce back to my old body. Yeah. I got to get back to work in humane amount of time, right? Like what mom feels comfortable leaving her baby or whatever. Just, it's crazy. So,
and we're going to talk more about those universal practices, but I think what you're saying is so true. I mean, you have to adapt to this new reality. Yeah. And we in this westernized country just want to like get back to our normal life, assuming that's even possible. But then we also need to realize like we need to create a support system so that after baby comes, like our only responsibility aside from recovering is to get to know this baby, is to take care of this baby. And we don't say that. Like, what is your postpartum plan? Not like, oh, what kind of gear did you get? But what is your postpartum plan? Who's going to take care of you? Who's going to feed you? Who's going to nurture you? you know, everyone wants to come and hold the baby. Who's there to say, I want to hold you, Mom?
Yes, exactly. And that's really important too. Again, we'll share it with that, but it's so important to protect this time. You know, I was really good at holding this boundary of, if people were coming over, it's like, come say hi, see me and the baby. Yep. I'm not really going to pass the baby off. This is what we're in the middle of doing. Thanks for stopping by. See you in 2 months.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And you have that experience. So why don't you tell everyone about why you got into this work? You're from India, so you had postpartum built in, and your mom was going to make sure that you followed through.
So I think my postpartum, I mean, it was difficult, but it was because I had my mom, it was more smooth, I think.
Well, and share
the birth. Yes.
Yeah.
So for when I found out I was pregnant, I too wanted to have a natural birth. I learned about hypnobirthing, and I wanted to have a birth at home. My husband was not as crazy about that idea. He said, okay, let's at least be in a hospital. So we got accepted into the midwives program. I wanted to have a water birth. It was all planned out. But similar to Mika, my daughter is very strong-willed, and she had a plan of her own. So she was breech at 32 weeks. So I did acupuncture, moxibustion, oils. I laid upside down on an ironing board every day for a month to try to turn her. And then at one point we had to make the difficult decision to go in the hospital and try an ECV, which is where they manually turn the baby, and that's done by an OB. And so it was a teaching hospital, a room full of people. Fortunately, I had a birth doula. She was there with my husband. And so I was trying to remember the things that she was doing about breathing or teaching. But it was still this room full of people, and I'm just like, okay, try again, doc, try again. And so he tried a few times, and she would come to the side, transverse, I think is what it's called, and then go back up. Come to the side and go back up.
And if you know her, it makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah. She's very strong-willed. And then, so we just had a few weeks left, and at some point, your body doesn't have enough room for baby to move, and so you kind of have to accept it. So then I was like, well, why don't I do a vaginal breech? But the doctors are not trained to do that. And then when she was 2 weeks overdue, it became clear that I had to have a scheduled C-section. And of course, that was so traumatic and disappointing because of everything I had hoped and planned for. And then, you know that's best for a baby, and you know all the potential consequences of not having that. You know, breastfeeding can be more difficult. They may not get the healthy bacteria that comes through being delivered vaginally. And so, but I realized in that moment, because my husband was worried, he's like, I don't want your disappointment to affect like your motherhood, you know? Yeah. And so I had to make a decision, like I have a health, you know, I'm gonna have a healthy baby, I'm healthy, we're both, so I need to get over my disappointment. But I still always feel like what I wish I'd gone differently. And then postpartum, my mom stayed with me for 6 months. It was cut a little bit short.
You did, can I remind people? Yeah. You did, you said you planned things for a gentle.
Oh yeah, so there are things you can do for a gentle cesarean, delayed cord clamping, immediate skin to skin. They want to tie your hands down so that you don't mess with the cords. And so I asked them not to do that. But even like with the IV, when they put her on my chest, I couldn't really
wrap your arms around her.
Yeah, and so that was hard. And you know, it was a great hospital, a great doctor, everything was fine. But those kinds of things, or like when I had to get my epidural, my husband had to leave the room, which I didn't know he'd ever be apart from me.
Yeah. And
so, you know, you're wearing hospital clothes, you're in a cold room. After baby comes, like they're coming in every hour to check the weight and bathe her, and at midnight when all you want to do is sleep. And so those were some of the hard adjustments. So it was nice to go home. And then my mom was over from India, and so she was cooking all the different things to help with lactation. There are things to help with back pain, certain foods and herbs. And then she and my husband really focused on taking care of me, and so that I could take care of my daughter. Yeah. And so it was actually physically hard to get out of bed the first few days because of the C-section. But we actually practiced something where you don't leave the house, or baby doesn't leave the house necessarily unless it's a doctor's appointment, for 90 days.
Wow. And
so my husband and I were both pretty resistant to it, but in the midst of it, and even at the end, we were like, wow, we're really glad we did that. Because once the baby comes, everybody wants to see baby. You're hosting, you're cleaning, you're cooking, running errands. And this was just about bond with baby, take care of baby. you're going to have to share your baby with the world the rest of your life. So this is the only time. And I think there are reasons for it. One, it was to protect baby's immunity. So the more people are coming and going to see your baby, the more you're exposing them to this world of germs. It's a lot of stimulation, right? So they're in this warm place, quiet, warm, safe place. And now, you know, I've seen people bring babies to restaurants that are a few days old, or to the movies, and it's like that's a lot of stimulation for them. And
yeah, babies actually, one of their coping mechanisms, babies sleep a lot in the beginning, right? Like 20-ish hours more or less.
Yeah.
And it's a coping mechanism because it's like, whoa, what's happening? Okay, I'm just gonna go to sleep and hide.
And everything will go away, hopefully.
Yeah, and then people won't have to. Yeah. So it's a coping mechanism, which they'll do even getting used to you and mom. Yeah. I mean, your mom.
Right.
And Jordan in this house, right?
Still
That's still a lot.
And I think spiritually,
yeah,
you want to protect the baby's mind because they literally are sponges. So everybody's energy, everybody's feelings and thoughts, they're taking all of that in.
Yeah.
And so the more you can protect them from all that for as long as possible. And I really see a difference in her temperament. So she's pretty calm most of the time and pretty like understanding. And all my nieces and nephews did the same thing. And so my mom attributes that to our 90-day tradition.
That's cool.
But the other thing we did during that time was infant massage. And I remember thinking at that time, wow, I wonder if women in America know about this because this is so great. It's so powerful in terms of our bonding. And so actually it was about 1.5 years ago that I read an article and I was like, let me look into this again. And so I did, and there was a training coming up and my husband said, go for it. And it's one of those like cultural traditions you take for granted. But when I went through this training, I was like, wow, there's a lot of science behind this. There's an art to baby massage that it helps them all, not only immediately in terms of gas colic or congestion or sleep, but long term. You're literally changing the DNA of your baby and helping transform their brain by loving touch. And so I just became all for it. And all my career, I'd worked in nonprofits wanting to change the world, and I had a hard time. I was like, well, now I'm doing baby massage, but it's like what's more powerful than helping families start from the beginning? Yeah. And, you know, they've shown a correlation between violence in communities and low touch. So America's pretty touch deprived. And so they found that communities where there's less touch, there's more violence. And so I think there's more than ever, this is the time that we get back into touching our children more in a loving way, each other, and the growing child. So your child never gets too old to receive loving touch. Yeah. And that's where Vyana Infant Massage was born.
That's awesome.
And we're going to talk more about massage and universal practices and so many more things. Lots of great experts. Can you tell us a little bit about who else we're going to have on the show?
Oh my gosh, we have so many people. We have my midwife. We have a woman from Postpartum Virginia who talks about postpartum anxiety and depression. We have a sleep trainee.
Yeah.
Your doula.
Yep.
Postpartum doulas. We have acupuncturists, chiropractors, self-care, Reiki, vibrational alignment. Everything. And if you want more, like what do you want, tell us. But we really just want to bring, and it's tricky because I'm saying we're going to bring information to you, and we are, but within each of those individual pockets of information is a wisdom, right? It's not these, like every baby's going to do these things kind of information that can be overwhelming. It is bringing ancient practices, real wisdom to you.
Yeah, because it's forgotten, right? We don't live in community anymore, so that ability to pass on experience and wisdom is harder. So we go to Dr. Google and we say, why is my baby crying? Or what's this rash? And oh no, that's cancer.
Yeah, I know.
So when we talk to other moms, we get more real life information.
Exactly. That's a little bit about the two of us. We're so glad you joined us. We can't wait to see you again.
You can follow us on
Facebook, Instagram. We'll post down below. We'd love for you to comment. Let us know what your experience has been. If you have had a baby or if you're trying, let us know that as well. And like they say, ain't no hood like motherhood. Thanks for joining us. See you later.